The most important part is that there's not a bad time. And a lot of times what folks want to do to make sure they're compliant is when they start a program, if you have 100 clients, ask all 100, give them that initial chance. So you know, no matter how willing they are, you won't catch all of them in a moment where they're able to do it, but we get a pretty healthy response rate. Beyond that, anybody who has a regular cadence of account review or check-in with their clients, it makes sense to then put them on a periodic schedule where any clients that I talked with in January or Q1, I may make another ask of those folks at the end of that time frame. And that has two benefits. One, you have a little bit of the recency of interaction, so they may remember specifics that they can discuss. And then two is, in an ideal world, an ideal review strategy has recent reviews always coming in. And
welcome to AFO Wealth Management Forward, a podcast powered by Arrowroot Family Office that's at the intersection of accounting, wealth management, behavioral finance, technology, and entrepreneurship. We help accounting firms and financial advisors grow their practice by going beyond the numbers as we learn from industry leaders and subject matter experts to discover the secret to their success. A podcast that highlights everything from the transformative power of AI to embracing the human-first approach of behavioral finance to help you understand the psychological and emotional relationships to money and meaning. Here is your host, Rory Henry, Director at Arrowroot Family Office and author of Holistic Guide to Wealth Management.
All right. Hello, everyone. I have another great guest joining me today. He is the CEO and co-founder of Amplify Reviews, which is a platform that is helping financial advisors with online reviews. He's also a musician and many other things. I've listened to a couple podcasts here on Whit, so I'm looking forward to having you on to talk to our audience about the power of online reviews, especially with the recent change from the SEC and the new marketing rules. So without further ado, let me introduce our guest, Whit Lanier. Whit, welcome to the show.
thank you very much, Rory. Appreciate the opportunity to have a chat with you.
Yeah, I know this will be very informative. I've heard a couple of other shows that you're on, and I think this is something that our audience wants to hear more about. So before we kind of get into the nuts and bolts of online reviews, can you give our audience a background? You know, what led you to start Amplify Reviews? I know you have a history in the medical review space as well.
Yeah, happy to. So yes, I've had a bunch of interesting roles that have had some digital marketing woven throughout them, but most relevant, I would say. So this is the second startup that I have worked in with the same founding team. And the first one was a healthcare technology company. And I don't know if I was as candid in some of the other ones. It took us a couple of business models to find the right product market fit. As I'm
so
sure
you pivoted a couple times.
Exactly. But yeah, and then, you know, if you hang out in a certain industry long enough, you might become an overnight success after feeling around for a little while. So it was 2014 where we found the real opportunity there, which was helping hospitals take existing patient experience survey data, which they are required to collect by Medicare.
Yeah.
And we looked at it as they unlocked a lot of marketing value from an asset that they already had. So they published that survey data in the form of ratings and reviews for their own physicians.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just had on Robert Kirk. I don't know if you know Robert. Yeah.
Great guy. Very sharp guy.
Very sharp guy, right? And he has a company called Intergen Data. So I'm fascinated by, you know, obviously what's going on with AI and the data that we can glean. What were some of the things that you learned early on, or what these medical companies learned from the client reviews? Is there anything that stood out when they started getting that feedback from clients?
Well, the first level of insights is not as deep. And in fact, it was sort of more surprising about what their standard practices were beforehand. So we worked with, I don't know if I should name them. We worked with one health system. Lots of health systems never shared any of the feedback they collected with their physicians. And that when they undertook this initiative to publish them, that was the first time the physicians were seeing the patient's feedback. But one was even worse than that, where their policy was, they felt the only time that they needed to share this patient feedback with the physicians was if there was a concern. So the only thing the doctors got was, here are some things the patients mentioned that we think you might need to work on. And so we did a case study video on that organization, and a younger doctor said, this was extremely discouraging. And I went and asked one of my mentors, what should I do with like the complaint sheet that I get? And the advice he got was, put it in a drawer and do not look at it. Like,
what?
Yes, he's like, it will depress you too much, and it's not a reflection of what happens. So for them, one of the surprising things wasn't just the marketing value to the prospective patients who are these doctors. It was that these physicians found out that 90 some odd % of their patients were really happy with the care that they were delivering, and they just had been unaware of it.
Wow. That's fascinating. And I know they say that lawsuits are tied to the level of bedside manner for physicians there. So you would think that, medical practices would welcome the feedback to know how their physicians are actually doing.
Are you an accountant looking to generate more revenue and secure your future success as automation and artificial intelligence revolutionize the accounting profession? If so, contact us at AFO Wealth Management Forward. We specialize in helping accountants and advisors just like you build a custom brand to pinpoint your optimal clientele, generate highly qualified leads through our data-driven digital marketing, and execute wealth management growth services to bring more value to your firm and your client's life. Our strategic approach to branding, marketing, and wealth management is carefully tailored to attract ideal clients, increase customer retention rates, and cultivate lasting relationships with clients across generations. Visit wealthmanagementforward.com to book your free consultation to find out how you can elevate your practice.
Well, so another really interesting thing that has changed since 10 years ago is they had a completely siloed approach, meaning there was a patient experience department that had a wall between it and the marketing department. And when you think about it, that has changed now. There are a lot of one overarching executive who oversees marketing and patient experience, because in any other area of business, the customer experience should be as closely connected to marketing as can be. And so that actually evolution has now happened in healthcare. We'd like to say we played a little bit of a part in it, but it seems sort of obvious, right?
Yeah. Now you're tackling obviously financial services. And for those of the audience that know, historically testimonials weren't allowed. So can you kind of give the audience some foundation here on what led you to get into this space?
Sure. Well, I don't know how familiar everyone is with the SEC marketing rule. It was announced in 2020, but really went into effect in November of 2022. Prior to that time, anything that was a testimonial or an endorsement was either completely forbidden or mired by so many compliance hurdles or checkboxes that very few people felt that it was worthwhile to use those in their marketing efforts. The SEC marketing rule changed that, gave very clear guidance about how advisors, anyone that they regulate, can use testimonials and endorsements, meaning a testimonial is an experience from a client, and an endorsement is anyone who's not a client. And so for me, that first company was sold in healthcare. We stayed at the acquiring company, and then my co-founding team and I all sort of got pulled to other chapters of our career that luckily sort of cadenced well for us to get back together. So we felt like there was a lot more need for this capability elsewhere. And specifically, when I learned about the SEC marketing rule, it just seemed like we should expect a very similar adoption in this industry as we saw in healthcare, because now a regulatory agency, I use the phrase, has sort of fired a starting pistol for this race. They said, hey, you can go now.
Yeah. And is there other industries that you can kind of point to that have opened up the regulatory parameters, such as what's going on in financial services right now? Are there others that you could point to see the potential growth for practitioners and firms out there to utilize reviews?
In terms of a regulatory arrangement, I don't have a great corollary. I think physicians are a decent metaphor for a couple of reasons. Number one is the physicians themselves were very hesitant or reluctant to get involved with online. Like, I think they preferred the mystique of just having their expertise respected.
Yeah.
But once it became inevitable, the hospitals and healthcare systems realized that if it is inevitable, by far the best strategy is to be proactive about it. And, what was popular for them was to keep as much control over the review process as possible. So when we look at the similarities for advisors and physicians, we have the added, so healthcare is highly regulated by HIPAA and other regulatory concerns and patient privacy concerns. So we've got a little bit of experience with that already. When we add in the disclosure requirements and the compliance concerns for advisors, it makes all the sense in the world to try and collect and publish the data with as much of that being in-house as possible to both appease compliance and really, from a marketing standpoint, control the messaging while not cherry picking, right?
Right. Right. And, I know you quoted some data here when I was using my research, and I think you said something like 93% of new clients come from referrals. So one, I want to confirm that number, and let's talk about how we can then utilize something like Amplify Reviews and online reviews to help cultivate more of those referrals from the current clients.
Yeah. So I looked at some stats right before the podcast. I've seen a couple of different studies. I got to back off of 93 a little bit. I've seen a couple that put it in the mid 80s of new clients come either from a center of influence referral or from an existing client referral. And when I talk to advisors, most of them sort of nod their head and say that sounds about right. Now, some of them obviously have different aggressive marketing strategies that might change that mix. But so my view is, if we take a step back and think about marketing, if you think about any type of business, you could try and get more eyeballs on your business, but usually the easier task is to get a higher percentage of the eyeballs already looking at your business
clients
to come in the door, right? To walk in the door, come give you a try. The stat that pairs with that one that I think I saw in June or July of last year is that I think I wrote it down, 57% of folks say that they go with the first advisor that they speak with. So if we think of the typical case that if I want an advisor, I'm going to ask my friends for recommendations. I might get 3 or 5 names. Whether I'm looking for reviews or not, I'm going to go Google those 3 to 5 names. And if one of those has a meaningful number of positive reviews and the other do not, like, there's all the data in the world that says that's going to be a strong gravitational pull towards that firm. And then if we pair that with the idea that if the highly rated one is the first call that I make, now I have a better than 50% chance that that's where I'm going to wind up going.
Yeah.
So I phrase it sometimes in the inverse, which is, if advisors are unconvinced or hesitant, right? I say, do you think in 3 years from now it will be unusual for an advisor to have no reviews online?
Right.
And most people realize it probably does. And so then the next question is, do you think if you're one of the advisors with no reviews, do you think you will lose business to someone who has a meaningful number of positive reviews? If they sort of follow that train of thought, then we get into the boat where I think the parallel is to financial planning, where I think the saying is the best time to start saving for retirement is 20 years ago, but the second best time is today. I think we're in a very similar boat there.
Yeah. And a number of our listeners are CPAs, accounting firms out there that are looking to adopt holistic wealth management services into their practice. And I always say, you have a current book of business within your current clientele. And so utilizing your book to really start providing more services, integrating these services in a way, and it's doing something like this and putting a review type of system in place will then allow you to attract more high valued clients to your book of business.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons. Well, one of the clients that we onboarded recently was saying, their good clients are very positive about their experience, but the advisor gets tired of asking them to serve as a reference for all of the potential new clients. And so one of the reasons he's excited about reviews is he thinks that'll diminish the number of asks. If people write a good paragraph about their experience, then that'll lessen the need, because that really is what has been missing. And I think that's what the SEC acknowledged, is that credentials are all fine and good, but to a consumer who knows they need financial help, it can all seem sort of similar. And I think what they really want to know is, what does it feel like to work with this person?
Yeah. Well, let's kind of talk about here how advisors are using Amplify. How does that work? Asking those current clients, is it sending a link? Is it sending them to a website? How does that methodology work?
Good question. The short answer is we have a number of options for how folks can do that, including an avenue that's very similar to what we did in healthcare. I'm not going to talk much about that because, as you may know, a surprisingly small number of firms are doing proactive client experience surveys, right? If you are, great, we can make it even easier to unlock value from that. For most of the firms that we're onboarding now, they use our tool to send out an email request to each client. That comes to one of our landing pages where we have a very straightforward ask of a star rating and a review with some disclosure language. The client hits submit. The client is then done with their portion of it. And then within our platform, we have a queue of all the reviews that have come in. And this is where the compliance checkboxes start to get checked. So somebody from compliance or somebody designated by compliance can come lay eyes on all of those to make sure that there's no personally identifiable information, or that could be a glowing review with a performance claim that isn't really allowed by the SEC. So they're able to approve each individual one. I alluded earlier to the fact that you cannot cherry pick only good reviews, and we can talk more about that. That's not really a concern anyone needs to worry about, but you do want to have a policy that says we're not going to violate the SEC's marketing rules, and we're not going to disclose personally identifiable information of our clients, those sorts of things. So once those have all gotten through that compliance check, those flow through to the client's website, where they just put 2 JavaScript widgets from our platform that can be styled to match their website, so that a prospect, again, I'm a prospect with 5 names, and I Google each one of them. When I land on your site, I can see you've got a 4.9 or a 5-star rating with 20, 30, 40, 50 reviews from your clients. Yeah.
It's so funny. I have a chapter in the book that I'm writing right now with that. We talk about the Vanguard Advisor Alpha study that was done over the last 20 years, talking about the advisor providing upwards of 3% net returns for their clients. And the discussion that we had on the podcast, and I talk about in the book, is right mindset, wrong market. So in every other facet of our lives, reviews and rankings are something that we as humans can go to make decisions with regards to our finances or our life. So looking at college rankings, looking at Yelp reviews, looking at Michelin star ratings. So this is something that we all as humans do. It's our heuristic, it's our mental shortcut that we can do to really, make better decisions. It doesn't work out when it comes to our stock picking or our investments, so to speak, but it's something that we all use. And so now with financial services and financial professionals, it's something that, clients definitely go to confirm they're working with a reputable firm that does good work.
Yeah, you used a lot of the phrases that I like to. It is decision heuristic, and we don't like for it to be the entire. We think we're smart. We don't like to think it's entirely the decision-making process, but when it's there and available, we have to be influenced by it. It's just what every other industry has trained us to do.
Right. Well, speaking of influence, is there a certain timing of when to send out the review request based on the work you've just done for a client? Is there some best practices there, Whit?
So there's 2 or 3 facets to the answer. The most important part is that there's not a bad time. And a lot of times what folks want to do to make sure they're compliant is when they start a program, if you have 100 clients, ask all 100, give them that initial chance. So you know, no matter how willing they are, you won't catch all of them in a moment where they're able to do it, but we get a pretty healthy response rate. Beyond that, anybody who has a regular cadence of account review or check-in with their clients, it makes sense to then put them on a periodic schedule where any clients that I talked with in January or Q1, I may make another ask of those folks at the end of that time frame. And that has two benefits. One, you have a little bit of the recency of interaction, so they may remember specifics that they can discuss. And then two is, in an ideal world, an ideal review strategy has recent reviews always coming in. And so if you can spread them out over the year that way, you'll make sure that anybody arriving on your site sees a somewhat recent review as one of the first things they see.
Gotcha. Now I know there's 7 prohibitions here in the advertising for the SEC. Can you talk about those 7 prohibitions and what advisors out there should be looking out for?
Man, you put me on the spot, Rory. I can pull up a cheat sheet and go through them.
We don't have to.
I alluded to the idea about the performance claim, and that is what some people don't think about, which is you may have an ecstatic client who's really happy about the returns that they've gotten. And they probably cannot talk about that in the review, or they may have a review where they can't do that. In general, though, I can give you a good enough answer to this question by talking about another similarity with healthcare. So in healthcare, once this started gaining traction, and when you were talking about adoption earlier, so 2014 was the first hospital to do this. And over the next 6 years, 400 of the biggest health systems in the country with thousands of physicians all started doing the exact same sort of program. So we saw that adoption, and you saw that it's understandable that if I see someone who I think of as a competitor who is starting to share this data and it's favorable, I'm going to realize that I may need to get on board with it. But to come back to it, the program got the name Patient Experience Transparency. And when you look at the SEC or FINRA, I think that's their governing goal for what they're asking of the advisors they regulate, which is be transparent with the audience that you're communicating with. And so that's basically what our whole program is after. And we actually think at its essence, a review program is providing additional transparency to a prospect about what the experience is like. So you can't, very rarely does the content of a review trigger one of those 7 general prohibitions from the SEC. Normally, if somebody is just talking about their experience or telling their story with the advisor, those concerns don't come in. But the goal, again, is transparency. And so when our clients publish reviews, we encourage them to always publish a short document that says what their policy is. Here's how we collect the reviews. Here's our intent to publish all of them. And the only reason we wouldn't publish them is if they trigger one of these concerns. And those SEC prohibitions are some of those concerns.
Speaking of concerns here, obviously we're moving into a world of AI, and there's bots out there. How, I know you talked about it on another podcast about how really your platform is the anti-AI platform. Can you share with our audience why that's the case?
Yeah, I'm glad to. Hopefully I can be the palate cleanser to everyone talking about
right?
About
when
AI.
they zig, I like to zag. So
Yes.
I welcome this. Well,
and you can, if you watch some of the news recently about some of the latest AI developments, there's concern about it is showing that a lack of human oversight can create some crazy outputs. And I've even heard the phrase that AI hallucinates sometimes in terms of the answers that they give folks. So instead, I think we will always desire something a little bit more transparently human. And I think that is the nature of a testimonial and the nature of what we do, which is, I don't want to hear what a big old computer has to say. I don't want to know what your credentials say. Right. I want to know what is the emotional experience of being your client, of This is the other thing that we talk about in a similarity with healthcare. If you're doing a good job, the relationship between an advisor and their client becomes a pretty intimate one, right? You have to share some very intimate details about your life and your goals. And you have to be a good steward of that intimacy if you're going to be a good advisor. So being able to shed some light on that in prose that was written by an individual with no help of any machine is what I think the big appeal is. And so I think I joked about it earlier, but I think this will be sort of a refreshing pause from AI, and people will want to know that it's content from humans.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've talked about it many times on this episode. We as financial professionals are privileged to receive intimate knowledge from our clients with regard to their finances, which many times they might not be able to speak to others about that, family members, people within their business. And then they'll talk about their life's aspirations, their goals, their fears. So we sit in a privileged position and we are given that intimate knowledge about their life. And so I trademarked the term advise roar Whit, because I believe in a return on relationship. So, moving forward here, providing that ability for those clients to become advocates of your service. They want to do that because they cherish that relationship, is something that I see moving forward, clients wanting um, this type of review process.
The first RIA that I got live on our platform had a t-shirt made with one of the reviews that they received, because it's sort of what I alluded to with the hospital. Like, a lot of advisors are very analytical people and
Right.
don't sort of worry themselves with the fluffy stuff of getting a feel-good bit of feedback from their clients, but they're hungrier for it than they realize. And when they do get it, it feels really nice.
Yeah, it does. It does. All right. This has been great, Whit. Is there anything that you want to share with our audience that we didn't touch on?
Let's see. I think the biggest thing from our approach that differentiates us, well, what I told you before we started the episode, Rory, I encourage everyone to start thinking about this now. And whether you choose our platform or something else, if you take steps to start getting reviews, you will be positioning yourself better for the future where they're going to become the norm. With that said, I think we do have a couple of advantages to our approach. The biggest thing is that we let you collect feedback before you publish it. We don't let you cherry pick it, but if you have a little bit of apprehension, it's natural for everyone to do it. If you're just a little concerned about what is it that our clients would say, we can let you look at all of that in our dashboard, let compliance look at all of that before you flip the switch to publish it. Or the other way that I phrase it is, you can buy the option for reviews. So you can collect the reviews today, but you're under no obligation to turn that customer feedback exercise into a marketing exercise until you are ready. And that usually alleviates some of the concern that some folks have.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. All righty, Whit. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. If people want to learn more about Amplify Reviews or get in touch with you, what's the best way to do so?
Every channel works. AmplifyReviews.com is our website. You can look me up on LinkedIn. You can look up Amplify Reviews on LinkedIn.
I love it. All right, buddy. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Enjoyed it, Rory.
All opinions expressed by Rob Santos and Rory Henry on this website podcast interview are solely their opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Arrowroot Family Office LLC or their parent company or affiliates, and may have been previously disseminated on television, radio, internet, or another medium. You should not treat any opinion expressed by anyone as a specific inducement to make a particular investment or follow a particular strategy, but only as an expression of their opinions. Past performance is not indicative of future results.